Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. You see it up there. You see it right here. You know what we're talking about. We're talking WandaVision, but we are not talking spoiler reviews. Oh, no, no, no. We are talking some potential theories. I know I said I was done with them, especially when I got led astray and actually was kind of closer with the stuff that I thought even before, like trailers and stuff came out. Yet today, I stumbled upon something that then led me down a bit of a rabbit hole that led me to some very interesting coincidences in a certain story that is tied to the Marvel Comics and to Wanda's story. So, we got one more potential theory to talk about. So why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat, we are getting ready to dive in to a potentially different big bad hiding in the shadows. We've been talking about big bads other than Agatha lurking in the shadows, potentially working with Agatha, from Mephisto to Nightmare to, you could even theorize Grim Reaper because his helmet pops up in that one, cartoon open for WandaVision. Yet today, when I was kind of diving into the chaos magic stuff, there's a being that gives Wanda the ability to have chaos magic, and it enhances, her mutant abilities with this power that makes her like super super powerful when she probably would have been like a low grade like telepath to some degree. And while I was doing my spoiler review, we were talking about how Feige, he keeps things fairly simple. Like, the comics are very, very complex. And some of the stories and some of the characters, if you were to try to explain to just a rational human being, they'd be like, wait, go back? And then go over there and over here and over here. Because there are some really intricate workings inside of comic mythology. And I think Feige keeps it simple so that the mass audience can consume it. Yes, he knows that there is a ton of comic book nerds like myself out there who've read the comics, who dive into this stuff when the movies are coming, that are completely ingrained. But the larger audience, let's be honest, is your mass public. You don't get to $2 billion riding the backs of nerds alone. You have to bring in everybody. And making this material accessible to people outside of the comic fandom is super important for business, and it's super important for the MCU's success to continue. You need to get everybody to buy into this stuff if we want the MCU to keep doing what it's doing and being as good as it is. So I initially kind of wavered at the idea that he might actually go down this rabbit hole and bring this character in, and it was probably more likely, based on what we saw with the Mind Stone in this episode, that was kind of almost like a replacement. This character gave Wanda her powers, or boosted her powers in the comics. The Mind Stone boosts her powers here in the MCU. And considering that this is like an ancient being that's been around since the beginning of time, basically, that kind of syncs up with some of the Infinity Stone lore, and that would probably be easier to consume for the mass audience. So after I did my spoiler review, I went on a deep dive, and there are some coincidences. Now, the character's name is, I've been going with Chthon. It I think stems from the Cthulhu mythology of the Lovecraft era. So I think that CHTH is Chthon. I could be wrong, feel free to correct me. But this character is an ancient being called an Elder God, one of 4 Elder Gods. And he is the god of chaos. And to try to describe his back history, we could be here way longer than my spoiler review, which the last 2 have both cleared an hour. And I don't think anybody wants to do that, and much like Kevin Feige, you want to try to keep this simple and easy to digest. But in his history, he is one of 4 beings that have basically been here for forever. And through different battles and things, they've kind of all landed in their own dimensions and realms that they look over. But Chthon is very, very interested in Earth. And one of the things that led to these, other places and worlds for these entities, these elder gods, was that, he was trying to take over Earth and lots more. And, he kind of had to be banished. But he kept a tie to Earth. Like I said, this is very intricate stuff. But he kept a tie and created ways for him to try to get back. So over the course of pre-modern era, Chthon multiple times has tried to get back to Earth, to break into Earth, and has been thwarted and sent back through, you can go back to Merlin and all those guys. They've all kind of faced him and quelled him, and eventually he was kind of confined to Mount Wundagore. Now, that, of course, is where the Wundagore plant comes from, which we referenced Agatha potentially having in her yard, which is why the dog died. And when she confirmed that she did kill the dog, made it even more plausible that that is the Wundagore plant, in her yard, because it's lethal to animals, and there's a ritual that you can kill the animal, eat the insides of the animal, and see the future. I don't know if we'll see any of that, but I think that's what it was tipping. And if you're tipping your hat to Wundagore, you're laying the foundation to get to Chthon, especially once the words chaos magic are introduced. And as I said in my spoiler review, Chthon kind of passes a piece of himself. This is a thing that they love to do in the comics. A piece of other beings can create things. But basically, he's on the verge of being banished and destroyed again. And before doing so, he had been creating this plot to try to get these two kids that had just been born near Wundagore Mountain that he could sense had immense power. And that, of course, is not Tommy and Billy. It's Pietro and Wanda. And when he's about to be destroyed, he has to bail on his plan, and he ends up touching Wanda and imbuing her with a piece of himself and his chaos magic. And over time, he grows power inside of Wanda and is eventually able to take over control of her and actually fights the Avengers. And like I said, with an intricate story like that, you can kind of see a way out where the Mind Stone could kind of replace this, entity that's existed since the beginning of time. Sort of lines up. However, when I went on that rabbit hole journey, there are so many coincidental things, or just names or things I saw while I was reading his back history, that just made me go, maybe, just maybe, Kevin Feige's got the cojones to take a big swing. And when you think about intricate, complex characters, Dormammu comes to mind real easy inside the MCU, and that was in probably one of the most intricate, confusing movies that the MCU put out, and yet somehow it was still, digestible for mass audiences. So if you could do Dormammu, I think you could probably do Chthon. And the reason I say that maybe this is the way we're going is because of these other coincidences. There is a storyline where he actually possesses Pietro's body to go do things and ends up getting into a huge fight with Hulk that leads to him being destroyed and banished again. But possessed Pietro, and now that we know that it's pretty likely that Pietro is not Mephisto or Nightmare, but rather, we heard Agatha say, she used the possession spell, and it was her eyes and ears. That, though, in and of itself is kind of a tip, an Easter egg, and you could say, yeah, well, that's what it is. It's one of these other fake trails that Feige's trying to lead us down. Okay, that's fine, because I don't think that he's necessarily been put inside of Pietro to help Agatha. I think Agatha might have just been controlling whoever this person is that she disguised as Pietro, but that concept would kind of point as a reference to Chthon. So even if this doesn't happen, there's certainly a lot of things that you could take out of this that they are applying to the MCU mythology for Wanda, a.k.a. the Scarlet Witch. But the coincidences don't stop with just him possessing Pietro. He is also the author of The Darkhold. The Darkhold is most likely that shiny book that we saw down in Agatha's Witch Lair. It is basically a book that is filled with all of the dark magic incantations you could think of. In that realm of going back and forth, of being banished and potentially destroyed, Chthon wanted ties back to Earth. So he wrote this book and then scattered the pages everywhere so that they would be potential pathways back to him. And he has these beings called the Other that, if people invoke through these pages, can allow Chthon to at least possess this being called the Other to physically act within Earth, even though it's not really entirely him. Again, very, very intricate, complicated stuff. But with that being said, eventually the Darkhold was brought together, then it was dispersed again, then it was brought back together. And like I said, this book is now bounded as a real thing, and if Agatha has her hands on it, it could be that she was trying to learn how to use more powerful dark magic over the course of the years, right? We saw when we did the Salem witch hunts, and it was Salem witch trials, where her coven pretty much tried to kill her for using dark magic. It could be tied to the Darkhold. And maybe in reading the Darkhold, she found out about this being Chthon and how powerful he is, and how that could lead to the taking over of the universe or the destruction of the universe, and perhaps she wants to try to get him out. One of the other things I've noticed about the book is the symbol that's kind of on the cover sort of looks like two keys. So if potentially Agatha is one of those two keys to letting Chthon out, perhaps she needs another one. One that maybe has ties to his power set. Potentially, maybe these elder gods are responsible, in this theory, responsible for the stones. And maybe some of his magic is tied to the Mind Stone. And you need that in order to open it up. And she could be the second key. This is all just complete theory and just throwing it out there just in case it happens. You have a little background going into this week. So that could be a thing. And everything that's been happening is indeed all of Agatha trying to do stuff for herself, but in time is trying to release something that's darker, that's bigger, that could become maybe the big bad that lurks in the shadows over the next phase. Chthon certainly is a big enough entity to do that with. But if that hasn't convinced you that this is even a remote possibility, that Feige would even think going this route, there are other things about Chthon that tie in directly to all the things that are coming up in this phase. For instance, he is responsible for the original vampires. Who's getting ready to join the MCU but the baddest of half-vampires known to mankind in Blade, and all of his stories usually involve vampires. If that's not enough, he has also fought Blade before, so if he is an overarching enemy, you could tie that into the Blade storyline and be something that's building, for more than just the Wanda story. If that's not enough for you, one of the other, you could say like his biggest nemesis, so to speak, is Doctor Strange, because Chthon is in the world of magic and, is, you could say a mythical being to a degree, kind of like Wanda. And Doctor Strange, being the, guardian of all things magical, would be the guy that would have to stop Chthon over and over and over again in the comics. And many times he has banished him or trapped him or sent him away. If you're needing a big bad going into Doctor Strange 2 and you're not going the Nightmare route, Chthon would make a lot of sense, and again, you could maybe fully introduce him in Doctor Strange 2, where it's like, well, things get weird in the Doctor Strange movies anyway, so just go with it. And it could be one of these things where maybe Chthon coming over embodies Wanda, uses her as a vessel, controls her with her magic to, alter reality. That maybe could be where we're heading. And if that's not enough for you, there is one other character that ties into a story that features Chthon, and this character also has something new coming up, and that being Loki, and the, with the time variance authority being part of Loki's story, and the idea of, kind of looking over the multiverse or the multiple different realities that exist in the world. It's one of those where all of that could also kind of lead to, like, say, maybe if Chthon does come over, that maybe starts the rip of the multiple realities and multiverse inside of WandaVision. But also, in that story, Loki makes himself appear to be Wanda to go get the Avengers to come help fight Chthon. So the fact that, like, you could just have a sentence that would feature Chthon, Loki, and Wanda, with the Loki show coming up, with the time variance authority being worked in there, and kind of, you know, this concept of like the time, you know, police that kind of look over everything and make sure that, you know, the world doesn't, you know, implode, you know, that all these realities don't collapse. Something that Chthon could do with his power set. And like I said, it's just a theory. It's something to throw out there. Like, you know, my initial instinct was like, no, I don't know if Feige would take that swing, because it is a complicated bit, like, what? But at the same time, a witch is just trying to bring an evil entity into the world to give herself more power to take everything over. It's also a pretty simple way that you could just easily digest somebody like Chthon, and for us comic nerds, we go, oh crap, I know who that guy is. And in case that's the case, now you've got a little bit of an arsenal of understanding of what might be coming. And I don't know. That's been the best thing about WandaVision. It is something that just keeps you on your toes, keeps you guessing, and every time you think you've shut 3 or 4 doors and you're finally narrowing things down, it opens 3 or 4 more where you're like, well, they could go down that alleyway, and we could lead to some interesting things that could tie into the overall universe. And I'm not gonna lie, it would be pretty cool, because if you thought Guardians of the Galaxy was like a big risk, and if Kevin Feige could do Guardians of the Galaxy, he could do anything. If Kevin Feige brings an Elder God into the world of the MCU, there is literally nothing this man won't try to pull off. So it would be dope to see, but like I said, I'm not going to tie hard fast like that's what's going on, because it definitely seems like it is simpler, and this is building more to a Agatha versus Wanda, and then we're going to have to deal with that white vision somewhere, but we'll see where we end up. But if it goes that route, now you know a little bit more about Chthon. So that's all I've got to say, man. I literally just learned most of this today, like I had said. I knew he tied to Wanda and the chaos magic that she has, but I did not know all these other things that I read today. So I've educated myself a little bit, hopefully educated you. Now I want to know what you're thinking. Is this a video that helped you at all? Interested you at all? Something that makes you go, you know what, that's kind of plausible. And if you're a comic book fan, is this something that maybe seems even more plausible to you, maybe having some of this background? Or is it just a ludicrous idea and you're like, see, man, you're just going down a trail that's going to lead to yet another dead end while Kevin Feige is just layering in Easter eggs? And for sure, the Chthon thing could just be a massive influence to ideas in this show. And that would also line up with things that Feige and Marvel has done before. So let me know anything you're thinking down below in the comment section. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the old Seaman as we approach the WandaVision finale, see if this crazy theory comes into play at all, or if we're just keeping it simple, see who the big surprise is. You want to be here for my own reaction, talk about it. I love chatting with you guys. You know, you just want to show a little love support like we're doing over here, and you haven't before, I urge you, I recommend you come join C-Maniac Nation by jumping over there, hitting that subscribe button, hit that little bell if you want those alerts. If not, no biggie, just hope to come on back sometime, give us another go. And until next time, for the C-Man's Cinema, sit down! I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace! Hey, what's up, everybody? C-Man here, letting you know if you're looking for some more C-Man content, well, you can find some right here and here. And if you haven't, you want to come join that C-Maniac Nation, you can do that over there. Till next time, see ya!